Welcome to episode 37 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Laws Guy. It's December 7, 1967. Two rival newborn professional soccer leagues in the United States, the United Soccer Association and the National Professional Soccer League, have just finished their first seasons. Both have TV deals, ambitious owners, and imported stars and imported ideas. And both have a big problem. Almost nobody is showing up to matches. On this day in 1967, the two groups agreed to stop fighting and merge into one competition, the North American Soccer League, the NASL. On paper, it's a rational business decision, one league instead of two. In practice, they're lighting the fuse in one of the most spectacular boom and bust stories in football history. Today we're going to use that boardroom merger as our anchor. How NASL came out of that 1967 experiment, how it soared on Pelé, Beckham and company, and then crashed, and how that fits into the much older stop-start story of soccer in the United States. And finally, how we get from there to MLS, Messi in Miami, legalized sports betting, and the 2026 World Cup on American soil. To understand why anyone thought NASL was a good idea in 1967, we have to rewind. America's relationship with soccer is older and weirder than people think. By the 1880s and 1890s, industrial towns in the Northeast already have organized football clubs. The American Football Association forms in 1884, and the USFA, forerunner to today's US Soccer Federation, is founded in 1913 and joins FIFA the same year. In the 1920s, the first American Soccer League, ASL, turns part of New England and the Mid-Atlantic into genuine soccer hotbeds, with immigrant communities packing grounds and clubs paying real wages. But the soccer war, a conflict between the ASL and the USFA over control of the US Open Cup, fractures the pro game and helps send the league into decline, just as the Great Depression bites. Still, the US national team pops up with some odd high points. 1930 World Cup. The US reached the semi-finals in Uruguay. There's no formal third-place match, so they and Yugoslavia are retrospectively recorded as joint third place. 1932, football is left out of the Los Angeles Olympics altogether, partly because the local organizers don't think it will sell tickets, and because FIFA and the IOC are fighting over amateur versus professional status. Then there's the 1950 Miracle on Grass, a 1-0 upset of heavyweight England in Belo Horizonte at the World Cup in Brazil. Every time the US looks like it might have been joining the football mainstream, the line flattens again. The Depression and the soccer war got the ASL. Post-war, other sports dominate the airwaves, and gridiron football captures the word football itself. The 1950 high fades. The national team virtually disappears from major tournaments for decades. So by the mid-1960s, American soccer is this odd mix of deep but localized history, sporadic international success, and no stable national top pro league. Into that vacuum, 1967 arrives with classic 60s optimism, TV, expansion, and businessmen convinced they can make soccer the next big thing. The 1967 season is chaos. Two rival leagues launch at once. The United Soccer Association, USA, sanctioned by FIFA, in such a rush to start that they literally import entire teams from Europe and South America to play under American city names. Wolverhampton become the Los Angeles Wolves. Aberdeen become the Washington Whips. Cagliari, Belenenses, Stoke, and others all play in disguise. The idea: instant quality, instant credibility. Then there's the National Professional Soccer League, the NPSL. It's not sanctioned by FIFA, but crucially backed by a national US TV deal with CBS. Franchises in major cities, emphasis on American-style sports presentation, and commercialism. Both leagues spend heavily on marketing. Both assume that if they put enough soccer on enough TV screens, American fans would just disappear. But they don't. Crowds are thin. TV ratings are underwhelming. Travel costs are high. Owners in both leagues start to panic. Which is why, on this day in December 1967, after just one season, the two groups meet, count the red ink, and merge. The new entity takes a grand name, North American Soccer League, NASL. And from 1968 and onward, the NASL is the top-flight pro soccer league for the US and Canada. In theory, the fighting is over and the building can begin. In reality, the first years nearly kill it. NASL's first seasons are a slog. In 1968, 17 teams start. A year later, that's chopped down to 5 after franchises fold or relocate. Crowds are often in the low thousands, sometimes in the hundreds. The league experiments with Americanized rules like a 35-yard offside line, shootouts to avoid draws, bonus points for goals, hoping to appeal to fans raised on baseball stats and NFL scoring. By 1971, NASL is down to 8 clubs and it looks like it might quietly disappear like its predecessors. What changes everything is the arrival of the king, Pelé. In 1975, the New York Cosmos, backed by communications giant Warner, signed 34-year-old Pelé out of semi-retirement at Santos. The impact is instant. Massive crowds at Giant Stadium, global media attention, celebrities on the sideline, Mick Jagger, Henry Kissinger, Muhammad Ali, and crucially, an example for other clubs. Buy stars, sell spectacle. Soon the NASL is full of imported legends. Franz Beckenbauer, Carlos Alberto, and Giorgio Chinaglia with the Cosmos, Johan Cruyff at the Washington Diplomats and later LA Aztecs, Eusebio in Boston, Gerd Müller in Fort Lauderdale, and George Best in Los Angeles. And by the late 1970s, the numbers finally look right. 24 teams spread across North America, league-wide average attendance over 13,000, Cosmos crowds topping 40 to 45,000 and occasionally filling Giant Stadium past 70,000 for big nights. From a distance, it looks like America is finally falling in love with soccer, but up close, the model is fragile. The league stretches itself to 24 franchises to cash franchise fees and plant flags in as many markets as possible. But when the novelty fades, so do crowds. Pelé, Beckenbauer, Cruyff and company are expensive. Clubs with big money owners chase each other in an arms race. Smaller clubs either follow and drown or get left behind. NASL never nails a stable national TV partner at serious money. And without big broadcast income, the project relies heavily on ticket sales and sponsorship. The late 70s and early 80s are peak years for the NFL, MLB, and NBA on US TV. Soccer is still fighting, not just for schedule space, but for mindshare in a crowded sports market. Economic headwinds in the early 80s make rich owners less tolerant of losses. So teams fold, travel becomes harder, the league's geographic footprint starts to shrink. By 1984, there are only 9 teams left. The Cosmos themselves fold a year later, and the NASL shuts down. From Pelé in a packed Giant Stadium to no pro outdoor league at all in less than a decade. So what happens to American soccer after that? Indoor soccer thrives in some markets, smaller fields, hockey-style boards, and high scoring. College soccer continues as a development pathway. Youth participation explodes in the suburbs. Soccer mom becomes a cliché. The US men's national team reappears at the 1990 World Cup after a 40-year absence, but professional infrastructure at home is shaky. The real hinge back upward is another World Cup decision, this time by FIFA. In 1988, FIFA awards the '94 World Cup to the United States on one big condition. The country must create a new, stable, top-flight professional league. That league will be Major League Soccer, or MLS. Founded in '93 as part of the World Cup hosting agreement. First season kicks off in '96 with 10 teams. MLS learns directly from NASL's mistakes. A single entity structure to control costs, the league effectively owns all player contracts, not the clubs. Salary caps and limited star wages. Soccer-specific stadiums to avoid paying rent to a giant half-empty NFL venue. Even then, the first decade is hard. Several clubs fold or relocate around 2002. Talk of collapse resurfaces. But MLS survives, then slowly thrives. If NASL is Pelé and the Cosmos, MLS shift into the global conversation has 2 symbolic names, Beckham and Messi. In 2007, Beckham joins LA Galaxy. MLS creates the so-called Beckham rule, allowing clubs to sign a small number of stars whose salaries sit partly outside the salary cap. Attendances rise, shirt sales spike, and other stars like Thierry Henry, Kaká, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and Wayne Rooney follow. In 2023, MLS signs a 10-year global streaming deal with Apple TV, centralizing all broadcasts. That same year, Lionel Messi signs for Inter Miami, co-owned by David Beckham. The Apple deal includes Messi-linked subscriber incentives, and global interest in MLS jumps overnight. Meanwhile, MLS has quietly grown to nearly 30 clubs, with more expansion planned, and just a few weeks ago designed to align its calendar with the European August-May rhythm in coming years, rather than the March-December schedule it has traditionally used. It's a long way from 1967. And there's another 21st century twist NASL never had to deal with: sports betting. For most of NASL's life, legal sports betting in the US is basically confined to Nevada. But in a 2018 decision, the Supreme Court allowed each state to legalize sports betting. And by the mid-2020s, almost 40 states plus Washington, D.C. have some form of legal sports betting. For soccer, that means MLS, European leagues, and international tournaments are suddenly part of everyday betting menus. Micro markets keep fans engaged minute to minute, and the sport sits alongside NFL and NBA in a new US betting ecosystem. Layer that onto Apple's global streaming, Messi in Miami in the 2026 World Cup, co-hosted by the US, Canada, and Mexico, and you get something NASL's owners could only dream about: structural, multi-platform interest rather than a single superstar propping everything up. All this is happening while another track of American soccer has been wildly successful for decades: the women's game. The US women's national team has won 4 World Cups and 4 Olympic golds. Their success has created icons: Mia Hamm, Abby Wambach, Megan Rapinoe, and normalized soccer as a top-tier sport for girls across the country. Professional women's leagues have started, folded, and then taken root again in the NWSL, which now coexists with MLS and shares many markets. In episode 16, we talked about how the 1999 World Cup win at the Rose Bowl was as culturally important as anything the US men have done. In other words, when Messi scores for Inter Miami, he's playing in a landscape that owes as much to Mia Hamm as it does to Pelé. Seen from that vantage point, that 1967 merger that birthed the NASL feels both doomed and necessary. Doomed because the league that came out of it was structurally fragile, overexpanded, under-televised, hooked on important legends. Necessary because it created a generation of fans, memories, and cautionary tales that fed directly into the 1994 World Cup bid and the design of MLS. That's all for episode 37 of OTD, the day 2 struggling 1967 experiments shook hands and created the NASL, setting off a half-century of boom, bust, and slow burn growth in American soccer. If you got memory sources of our NASL stories from the days of Pelé, Cruyff, Best, or the Tampa Day Rowdies, then email us at otd@17lawsky.com. Subscribe and leave us a 5-star review so more North American soccer nostalgics can find us. Tomorrow, in episode 38, we'll rewind to 1929 and cross the Atlantic again to Rome, the newly unified Italian capital clubs Lazio and Roma, and the first Derby della Capitale. How did a stitched-together city rivalry become one of Europe's most charged fixtures, and where does it sit in the Derby pantheon today? Don't miss it.